Canada is having, we see Oregon businesses not being advocated. And as a result, we're not sending our goods and services to the world, and thus job growth is stagnating. I will be a champion for the free trade agreements that the President has admonished us to pass, because the President, like me, understands trade leads to jobs. And I'm very happy to say that I'm in his corner on this, as well as Senator Ron Wyden, who spoke about it just last month in front of 1,000 people in Portland who are business and community leaders. The necessity of trade in this district and this state. It doesn't mean trade at any cost, mind you. It means that when you have an agreement, you hold the other party responsible, and they have to agree to the terms of that agreement. If they don't, they have a strong representative here in this district who will fight for these Oregon businesses to make sure their interests are protected. And the third thing that we have to do to create jobs is to put confidence back in the economy. Confidence back in the lives of American people, of entrepreneurs, of people who would hire. How do you put confidence back in those people? Well, you show them that on the federal side of things, we're fiscally responsible. We're not borrowing money we don't have. Just like their business can't do. Just like their schools can't do. Just like their nonprofit organization cannot do. Just like our state government is not permitted to do. And so I'm proposing over the next 10 years, our country move to a balanced budget. Make it an amendment. Write it into the Constitution. Why? Because elected officials in Washington, D.C. have demonstrated an inability, a lack of discipline to do it on their own. So let's let the people of this country mandate that you have to balance the books. Make some tough decisions. Stop being the credit card Congress that you become. You do these things, and it will spur economic growth because of the confidence and the certainty it will create. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this election is about issues. And I've been very eager and excited to talk about issues throughout. But I need to set the record straight in the remaining time that I have. Where's my timekeeper? How much time do I have, John? 2 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, those who are supporting my fellow candidate have spent $1.5 million trying to discredit me and mischaracterize my views and my background. Let me set the record straight. My business had an error, a bookkeeping error in 2006, whereby we did not pay payroll taxes for a certain period of months. As soon as it was discovered, we immediately made change in personnel that made that egregious error, and we paid off the lien, the taxes, within 90 days. We'd never had a tax issue before that. We've never had one since. I would also add that I've never had employees that have never been paid. They've all been paid. But rather, the people who had a complaint against my company 10 years ago were customers who didn't get a job in their industry immediately following their work with our business. And so they filed a complaint. And as a small business, rather than fight it, we settled. That's 3 people out of 1,000 that we train for future careers. Incidentally, one of them actually asked me for a job. When I told him I wasn't hiring at the time, he decided to form a complaint against me. Another one actually got a job with our clients, and then after he got the job, after about 3 months, then he decided to file a complaint. Interesting, isn't it? And these types of allegations and mischaracterizations are being furthered by the same political establishment that have covered up for David Wu and put us in this predicament we're in today. That is, we have the worst representation of any district in the country, none. And I'm standing here saying it's time to move the establishment aside and let the people determine who will represent them. And I have many opportunities, and I will express this in many ways that we can work together. I'm tired of more of the same. I'm tired of the elite determining who will be your representative and mine. I'm looking forward to this discussion today and lay out my ambitious and bipartisan plan to make this happen. Thank you very much.
Turns out that we have a microphone on each side for questioners, so if you want to line up both on this way and on this way, then we'll get to you. So a reminder again, try to keep your question formulated within 1 minute, and we'll have a time 2 minutes per response.
Forest South Forum member. Aside from the fact that newcomers in Congress traditionally are seen and not heard, both of you, in all that I've seen, are emphasizing the creation of jobs. Now, no job is there if the money is not there for wages. How do you propose to remedy this situation in order to fulfill what you've said, I will provide jobs?
Thank you for the question. Well, first of all, it needs to be pointed out. When I'm elected, I'll be part of the majority. I'll have the ability as a leader to actually affect positive change for this district, not to mention the state as a whole. If my opponent is elected, she'll be in the minority this year, probably for the next 3 years, who knows, maybe the next 5, 7 years, as a freshman. And because she has taken $1.5 million from special interests and her party, I think it's quite clear that she is beholden to push a button as they dictate. Rather, I have demonstrated independence from my party throughout this campaign. I've actually told the leadership of my campaign, I think it's wrong to try to repeal the Affordable Care Act. It was a useless exercise because it was never going to go anywhere in the Senate and certainly in the Oval Office. It's wrong to sign pledges written by insiders in Washington, D.C., such as the No New Tax Pledge. I refuse to sign it. I've also told my party that the privatization of Medicare or Social Security is unacceptable to me. So if we're going to actually make positive change as a freshman, we have to demonstrate some leverage. And I think I've got terrific leverage, because I think my party leadership understands in order for me to be effective, they have to give me the independence that's necessary and not just be a party line vote. That partisanship is what's tearing our country apart. So once again, it comes back to job creation. If you look at almost every issue that we're facing right now as a country, every deficit that we're facing right now as a country, it's because we don't have enough people working. So who is more inclined to have the skill set, the background, to understand what motivates job creation? Someone who's been doing it for 16 years or another attorney? With all due respect to Congress, I don't think the problem is that we don't have enough lawyers. I think the problem is we don't have enough job creators with that perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Forrest, for the question. And I want to say that I'm the person in this campaign who has both a short-term and a long-term proposal for jobs. And I want to mention just a couple of the things. First, it's a matter of priorities. On things like infrastructure projects, there are bipartisan plans for funding infrastructure, but we need to say, this is a matter of priorities. What are we spending money on? We're spending a lot of money giving tax breaks to big oil companies and big agriculture businesses that don't need them. We can focus that money on policies that will create jobs. But I talked about the support from the Credit Union Association. That is a no-cost plan to get more people back to work in small businesses. That is a plan where if we could raise the cap that's on the amount of loans credit unions can make to their members, it doesn't cost the public anything. It gets people back to work in small businesses across the state and across the country. So it's a matter of priorities, what we're spending money on, and it's finding solutions that are no cost to the taxpayer that will help create jobs in many different ways. And I also want to say, if you want someone to work in a bipartisan fashion, you elect someone who's actually done it. If you want someone to balance a budget, it's easy to talk about balancing a budget. You elect someone who's already done it. We've balanced our budget in the state legislature, all 3 terms that I've been there, and I've made some tough choices. So it's easy to say, I'll balance a budget or I'll work across the aisle, but if you want someone with a proven record, that's me. I've proven both bipartisanship and the ability to make the tough choices to balance a budget. In fact, my very first term in the Oregon legislature, I was given a choice. Did I want to sit on the side of the House where most of the Democrats were or where most of the Republicans were? I picked the side where the Republicans were. I spent enough time with the Democrats in meetings. I wanted to get to know my Republican colleagues. So if you want someone to work in a bipartisan way, you elect someone who's already proven that.
Craig Rodine, Forum member. I'm offering the Dr. Doom question. My issue is the national debt.
This year, the deficit is going to be $1.4 trillion. So far, what we've heard from both parties is, in my view, absolutely garbage. Nobody's really addressing the real problem, which is entitlements, Social Security, Medicare, prescription drugs. The solution to national debt is probably right here in this room. Because we're the ones, those of us over 65, who are drawing the benefits right now. The waiter who just walked out of here gets to pay for it. So what seriously can we do, can Congress do, to come to people like us and say, you know what, the gravy train days are over, folks. We all have to be part of the solution, including the retirees.
Thank you, Harry, for the question. And yes, there is a lot of work to be done on Medicare and Social Security, but we can do that without sacrificing the promise that we've made to seniors. And let me tell you a couple places where we can start, especially with Medicare. First of all, I support negotiation of prescription drugs. My opponent does not. We, at the federal level, negotiate the cost of prescription drugs for our veterans. There's no reason why we shouldn't be doing that for our seniors as well. Just like we do in Oregon with the prescription drug purchasing pool. The reason that we can't do that now is because the pharmaceutical lobby blocked that provision. That would free up a lot of money. If we can get that passed, have the courage to stand up to the lobby and say, we need to be able to negotiate these prescription drug costs. The other thing we need to do a much better job of is cracking down on fraud. There's a tremendous amount of fraud in Medicare and Medicaid, and we need to get better investigators and better enforcement of those provisions. That will put more money on the table as well. With regard to Social Security, you said something about doom and gloom. There's a pretty easy solution we can start with. Right now, people pay Social Security up to 106.8 of their income. We can raise that cap. Or there are proposals we can look at as well to in between 106,000 and 250,000 not pay. But how about those making more than $250,000 a year? You could add the Social Security tax to that as well. So there are solutions that we can come up with that do not break the promise to our seniors, and especially with things like Medicare. We're not just talking about the seniors, many of whom, yes, are here, but we're talking about those in the what's called the sandwich generation, where families are taking care of their kids and they're taking care of their parents. So Medicare is an important promise that we've made to our seniors and we'll fight to protect.
Let me address a couple of things that were said that are false. I don't know where Suzanne suggests that I wouldn't want to negotiate for pharmaceuticals. I'd be interested to know where she came up with such a statement. Second, the fact that I don't know how to balance a budget. As a small business owner, you tell any small business owner who's stayed in business 16 years they don't know how to balance a budget. What a ridiculous statement. 98% she has voted with her party in Salem, ladies and gentlemen. And when she was not in an evenly split House and almost evenly split Senate, she voted 99% of the time with her party. So that's just a record that she doesn't want to talk about, but it's true. We don't need that same thinking and activity in Congress. That's why we're in this terrible fix. Let's address your specific question, sir. You talked about the debt. $15 trillion debt. Last year our deficit was $1.3 trillion as a country. That was the second highest deficit we've ever had. The highest deficit was in 2009. The third highest was 2010. You see a pattern here? And ladies and gentlemen, this proposal of, quote, cutting, just taxing the wealthy, whoever they are, if you just eliminated the Bush tax cuts, as some people like to refer to them, and by the way, I'm not an apologist for the wealthy, they can take care of themselves, but let's just do some simple math together. Economists suggest if you eliminate the Bush tax cuts, that will save us $100 billion. Fantastic. Now our deficit is $1.2 trillion. Can we get serious here? It's about a total overhaul of the tax system. It's been done before in a bipartisan fashion, with a Democrat president and a Republican Congress in '97, and the flip in 1986. And you want to save Social Security? I do too. There's a Bowles-Simpson report out there. I'd encourage you to go to my website and read more about it. But the Bowles-Simpson is a bipartisan commission which suggested 11 different recommendations so that we can save Social Security for current seniors who deserve it, who have earned it, as well as future seniors who are expecting it. And I support moving forward using that as our roadmap.
Forum member. I would like to come back to Oregon temporarily because I see some of the same things happening in Oregon that happen in Congress. I would like each candidate to share your thoughts about Senator Telfer's move to drastically decrease funding for the property tax deferral program for seniors and people with disabilities, and the benefits that could derive from comprehensive tax reform to bring our antiquated state tax system up to the 21st century.
Well, Dolores, I appreciate the sincerity of your question. I hope you'll allow me to take a mulligan on this one, since that's a state issue, and I'm going to leave it to those on the state side. I'm running for a federal office, but let's just talk generally about some of the unfairness and inequities that are in the current federal tax system. General Electric made $14.1 billion in 2010. Most of it overseas. The General Electric CEO is the job czar for President Obama. And yet, what happened? That year, after making $14.1 billion, GE paid 0 federal income tax, ladies and gentlemen. How is that right? Some of you have, I hate to pick on Verizon, but I'll pick on Verizon because they're picking on us. Verizon, you may have them in your pocket right now. You wonder how they afford those expensive commercials to get your business? They made money off the tax code in 2010, billions of dollars off it. Ladies and gentlemen, we need wholesale tax reform. We don't need band-aid approaches, such as what Suzanne has proposed, such as what's happening in Congress right now. This 60-day payroll tax extension is ridiculous. It's ridiculous because it doesn't give you any certainty if you have a job, and it doesn't give hiring people any certainty if they're trying to hire and grow their company. People in Congress have just, there's not enough of them who know how to create a job. And that's why you see these band-aid approaches. I'm tired of raising taxes on a broken system. Let's fix the system. Let's have certainty long term. That will give the confidence necessary for entrepreneurs and risk takers and investors to hire again in our state and in our country.
Thank you, Dolores, for your question about the important senior property tax deferral system. I know some changes were made trying to rein it in to make sure that it went to appropriate people who are qualified for the program. And I know that the February session will be looking at that issue as well. And I understand that Oregon has an unbalanced tax structure, and efforts have been made basically every session that I was in the legislature, and probably as long as you can, as far back as you can all remember, to try to change Oregon's tax structure. And at least this last session, there was a bill to change the kicker so it's a credit instead of a refund. But I wanted to take the rest of my time to talk about related issues and to clarify something that Rob said about my voting record in the Oregon legislature, which shows, again, and Rob knows this because we've talked about this before, a misunderstanding of how the Oregon legislature works. And frankly, Congress could take a lesson from the Oregon legislature about how to work together. What he's talking about is voting 98% of the time with my party is something that the Oregonian has on their government website that shows that over the time, each session, that I voted 98% of the time with a majority of Democrats. So we did an analysis, because in the Oregon legislature, a lot of what we do is either unanimous or bipartisan. We did an analysis of all 3 sessions that I was in the legislature. We looked at those bills. You know how many times I voted with a majority of Republicans? 98%. So it's misleading to say that I voted 98% of the time with the Democrats without pointing out that a lot of the legislation legislation is bipartisan or unanimous. In fact, I chaired the redistricting committee where we brought people together from around the state. We traveled around. We got the information we needed. We passed that with a strong bipartisan support in both chambers, and I'm proud of it.
We don't exactly know what's going on up here. The only thing we can think of is that some of these microphones are conflicting with each other. So if there's anything we could do, we would. On to the questions. I think that the last question brings up a point. We're talking about federal office, federal government here. So when you ask a question, ask it about federal office, not state.
I think the problem with the PA system is that it's a Republican system.
Are you through?
I'm going forward for a minute. I'd like to spend just a minute, if you wouldn't mind, talking about veterans issues. There's a lot of talk about changing the retirement system for military veterans. And of course, veterans groups think it would be a bad system to do if they change it. There's talk about charging for health care for retirees that was promised when they did pass it that it wouldn't happen. And things like that. I was just wondering if you could spend some time talking about the veterans issue.
Thank you, Bill, for the question, and thank you for your service. And I have a large group of veterans supporting my campaign, and I'm working with them on these issues. I respect the service of veterans. My father was a veteran of the Navy. We have to respect the service, and we have to make sure that when we're making cuts in our defense budget, that we aren't cutting things like health care, mental health care, job reintegration services, and things that veterans deserve. And veterans put their life on the line for the country, and I, for one, will be standing up to make sure that they get the health care coverage and the services that they need to be reintegrated into the workforce when they come back, and that we keep our promise made to veterans. And again, it's a matter of priorities. If we're looking at the defense budget, look at the amount of money that we spend in Iraq and Afghanistan on private contractors. We need to be looking at places where we can make sound cuts that don't jeopardize our safety, but that keep our promise to veterans who have served, who are back in this country. So thank you for your service, Bill.
Thank you, Bill, for the question and also for your sacrifices. And I extend that to your family as well. There are certain people in our society that we absolutely have a debt to repay. I believe our seniors, I believe it's our children, and I believe it's our veterans who have done remarkable and inexplicable things to protect our country. One of the things that I'm very passionate about is making sure that these veterans, when they return home, go from helmet to hard hat in a very seamless manner. I was one of the only Republicans who stood up when President Obama gave his jobs plan back in September in front of a joint session and said that he is absolutely right. Veterans need to be put in the front of the hiring line when they return home. Now, you can't do that without necessarily making sure that they're prepared professionally. They have to have the skill sets necessary so that they can be productive. So it comes in one of two ways. First of all, you make sure that they have the health services that are required. And that's not only just the normal health care, but also mental health care. And also you need to make sure that they have the skills, that they're retrained if necessary. And in my business of GameFace, we are in the business of training people to have successful careers. I'm a trainer. I'm an educator this way. And again, nothing has given me greater satisfaction as a business owner than to see someone come into our doors with very little hope of being able to find a job, even in their home market, wherever that may be, Houston, Boston, Minneapolis, and after just a few days, we're able to send them back home and actually get them a career started within days, weeks, months at the most. That's the kind of attitude I want to bring to Congress, and that sense of responsibility to our veterans.
How many people have questions that they'd like to come up and ask? Any of you want? Okay. I was going to change the response to 1 minute, but I think we can go the way we are, so we'll keep going with 2 minutes.
Chris Leslie, former member. As well, a former veteran and personnel man, I know that military men, a lot of them, or women, used to go into the post office. Now, why not close military bases instead of post offices? Must be a Republican. Must be a Republican sound. And I am a Republican. I'm a proud Republican, but no little T, whatever. But it's keeping it simple. Why not close the military bases and save money that way? Trillions of dollars.
Ted's asked us to take 1 minute for this question. You're right. There is inefficiency in the military. Last year, as I understand it, it was reported that there was $70 billion of waste and fraud in the 2 wars that we've been waging over the last decade. So certainly, I think you need to put someone back in Congress, another member of Congress, who has a sharp eye for efficiency. As one who's met a payroll, who's had to learn how to make tough decisions, who did not get a bailout whenever you have a tough month in your small business, I have an eye for waste and redundancy. And I think we need that more in government. I'm not used to just billing people. I'm used to providing services and making sure that we can continue to afford to do that. But I think it's not just the military, it's all facets of government. Medicare, Medicaid, $60 to $70 billion in waste last year in 2010. Ladies and gentlemen, before we even have a conversation about raising taxes, you have a right to ask, where is our tax money going? And until we can provide a confident answer and proof and transparency, then I think you should be upset. And anyone like my opponent who voted to raise taxes 60 times in 5 years in the legislature without even asking for an audit is someone who actually probably thinks we need more tax increases.
Thank you for your question, and I am concerned about closing post offices. And I listened to Congressman DeFazio when he was speaking on the House floor about how that's going to impact especially rural areas when people don't have a post office available. We don't have military bases here. We rely more on National Guard, and National Guard can be a more efficient, cost-effective way to provide military services. But we do have to be aware that if we're talking about closing military bases, we have to have a place for those people to go and jobs for those people to enter into. So any decision like that has to be made lightly, because if we're closing bases, that means people out of work as well. So we have to find a balanced approach to that, just as a balanced approach to an approach that deals with priorities to how we fund these things too. And I wanted to just take a couple seconds to say, Rob has just again mischaracterized my record. I did not vote. There weren't 60 tax votes that came up in my 3 terms in the legislature. So I look at any tax proposal to see if it's fair and if it's progressive, not regressive, not impacting low-income families. So thank you for your question. I'm concerned about closing post offices as well.
Hi, Mary Vanderweel, forum member and Beaverton School Board member. My question has 2 parts, so I hope you get 2 minutes. 1, what have you done to date to support strong public schools? And 2, what do you support, or what would you seek to change in President Obama's current education agenda? Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for your question and for your service on the Beaverton School Board. I can't list everything I've done to help public education in 2 minutes, so I'll try to summarize. I became an education advocate during my career break and did everything from rebuilding a playground to serving on a district committee, studying 2nd languages, to serving on the Beaverton Education Foundation Board, to teaching thousands of students about civics and government, and spent countless hours in classrooms and in local school committees, site councils, improving our public education. And that was as a parent before I was even elected to the legislature. My first term in the legislature, we were able to actually increase funding for K-12 schools to help began to reduce class sizes and restore programs like art and music and things that really keep kids in school. So I served on the Senate Education Committee just this last session. We made a lot of progress in passing the Unified Board and policies that will help improve public education. One of the bills that I sponsored actually reduces mandates on schools and school districts. That was a bipartisan proposal where we went through the laws and the regulations and found things that would create additional or duplicative burdens on our schools and our districts. Got bipartisan co-sponsorship, it passed both chambers, and we were able to free up more time for schools and districts. And the second part of your question has to do with the federal education policy and where I agree and disagree with President Obama. I don't necessarily agree with competitive funding. I believe that we need significant changes to No Child Left Behind so that we reduce dependence on standardized tests. I think there's too much standardized testing. And I believe that more focus should be placed on all of the schools and less just on charter schools. Charter schools need to be accountable, but more students go to the other schools. We need to put a well-rounded focus and less standardized testing. Thank you for the question.
We have some problem solvers in the audience, and there is a possibility that maybe both of you may have cell phones that are on. No? I don't. No, well. Somebody in the first row. Oh.
Thank you. I'm grateful for the question about education. First thing I do, Mary, to support public education is I put my kids through it. And we've had 3 boys, my wife and I have gone through, as I mentioned, Tiger Falls School District. And along the way, we've been very involved in classrooms, we've been very involved in athletic programs. I've brought students from our school district into my office and did job training for them to give them an idea of what kind of world is awaiting them. And I had a very in-depth conversation within your school board, the Beaverton School District. I had a very in-depth conversation with the chairwoman of the district, the board, as well as the vice chairwoman, and both of those conversations led to them endorsing me because they really believe that I will be an advocate for our children back in Congress, and I'm grateful for those endorsements. But specifically, what can we do? First of all, the No Child Left Behind Act, I think, had a noble purpose or mission, but I think we've seen in its implementation, there's some flaws to it. As a result, I think we see less money coming back to the local districts and more of it being gobbled up in Washington, D.C. I think that's wrong. I think that money would be better spent here because I trust my administrators like you, Mary, and the instructors, those teachers in the classroom, and the parents to make better choices on how we educate our kids if they have those resources at their advantage. I believe in giving parents choice. Suzanne was in the minority when she voted against open enrollment in the last legislative session, even though Governor Kitzhofer signed it into law here. I'm for choice. That whether that be charter schools, virtual schools, etc. And with the public school system, we need to make sure that our teachers have the resources that they need, adapting more technology into the classroom, giving kids the chance to learn in the classroom like they learn and entertain themselves outside of the classroom through technology. And also making sure our teachers are adjudicated and evaluated by their peers, not by some bureaucrat who doesn't understand the challenges of working in a crowded classroom today. Those are just a few things. Please check out my website for more details.
Okay, here's what we're going to do now. We're going to cut down the answers to 1 minute for 2 more questions. At the end of that time, we will have closing statements so that we contain all this within our proper time for the television coverage. And as soon as that is done, we'll take a few more questions off camera. Is that okay? All right. So that's what. So 1 minute responses now for the next 2 and 2 only.
Kathy Stanton, foreign member and a member of the Beaverton City Council. A lot of conversation today about taxes and spending. For me, taxes are nothing more than fees for services for myself, my family, my neighbor. But as a local elected official, I have to look at taxes in a different way, and also ways that we are taxed by what is specifically referred to as an unfunded mandate. And that happens in Oregon, was eliminated through ballot measures, that there will be no more unfunded mandates through the state, but the federal government still does that. So please give me your ideas on maintaining autonomy, home rule for no preemptions of levels of government down to the smallest level, and unfunded mandates and the impact it has on people at the local community.
Thank you for the question, Kathy, and again, thank you for the volunteer service you give Beaverton. Ladies and gentlemen, the fact is I have 21 mayors in this district, which is about 70% of the total mayors in this district who have endorsed me. Now why? Why would they choose me? I've never held elected office. Because as they've looked at my background, at my skill sets, at my temperament, and my ability to work across party lines versus the alternative and the record, they've said Rob Cornilles is the congressman we want to work with. We believe we could partner well with him to grow jobs in this community. They also understand, Kathy, that I am opposed to the federal government insisting on mandates, leveling mandates on local officials, whether they be in city councils, or whether they be school districts, or whether they be business owners, who the federal government says you have to provide a certain level of health care to your employees. I think those decisions should be left on a local level. They should be left in a classroom. They should be left, frankly, in the manufacturing plants and stores and offices of this district. Because I have confidence in Oregonians to make the right decisions for the local communities, rather than someone 2,800 miles away who doesn't understand our culture, our personality.
Thank you, Kathy, for the question and for the service. As someone who's had to deal with unfunded mandates in the Oregon legislature, I appreciate the concern about that. We've had ballot measures that have passed by initiative in Oregon that require the legislature to fund, especially in public safety issues. So it's very, very difficult to have an order to do something without the funding that comes along with it. So I'm very much aware of that. I've also opposed many attempts to preempt local government. I believe that our local government officials are best to make decisions at the local level, and our state government officials are the best to make decisions at the state level. And you know, my term in the legislature over 3 terms puts me in the best position to work on those partnerships between the state and Congress. I served, I know the service, and I have the relationships. And I also have mayors endorsing my candidacy and county commissioners. So I will work to make sure that local decision makers keep their autonomy.
We're going to not take the second one right now. We'll allow the 2 candidates to catch their breath for a second. And we're going to give each one of them a chance to do a 2-minute final thoughts. Then we will go back into a few more questions and answers. Mind going first?
I appreciate the questions thus far. I look forward to more. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm tired of more of the same. I'm not satisfied with the status quo. I was taught early in life, if you continue to think like you've always thought, you'll continue to get what you've always got. I'm tired of the political elite determining the future of this state, especially when they're from Washington, D.C., and they have no interest in you. They have no interest in your future. All they care about is party politics. Partisanship is not getting us anywhere. So I'm asking for you today to consider, do you want to reward behavior that divides this state? Do you want to reward those people who spend $1.5 million to discredit a small business owner who goes to work every day and tries to earn an honest living with their employees? Is that the kind of environment that will encourage more political involvement and attention from people like you and me? If you want to reward that, then obviously that's your prerogative and you have a clear choice who to vote for. But I'm asking you, while I recognize that you are looking at both of us and wondering who of these two is more willing to go back to Washington and actually get something done, actually work with anyone who's ready to roll up their sleeves in an honest and responsible manner and progress this country and our state. I recognize that's your question in your mind, and I pledge to you I will be that person. I've already demonstrated it in this campaign. I will continue to do so in my thoughts and actions and the things that I say. But ladies and gentlemen, let me leave you with a challenge. Will you do the same thing starting today? Will you put aside your partisan thoughts? Will you put aside the entrenched attitude of I can never vote for a Republican? And ask yourself, what's best for this district right now? What's best for this country? Because how can we expect Congress to get along, cooperate, and move our country forward if we're not willing to do the same thing right here at home? I'm Rob Cornilles. I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here today at the Washington County Public Affairs Forum. Now, I don't need to tell you that Congress has pretty low approval ratings these days, with too many people out of work, homes in foreclosure, hunger, homelessness in our community. We need members of Congress to stop playing politics and do their job. And the voters in the 1st Congressional District are ready for leadership. They're ready for someone who will get back there and work with the right priorities. Someone who doesn't just talk about balancing a budget, someone who's done it. Someone who doesn't just talk about working across the aisle, someone who's done it. Someone who's been consistent in positions and values throughout her life and career, not someone who changes positions based on the way the political wind is blowing. Now, even before this campaign, the Oregonian wrote an article called "Look for Leadership in the First." And they said, a seat in the United States Congress is not an entry-level position. And they noted that there are good reasons why Oregonians rarely send someone to Congress who's never before held elected office. I'm proud to have received their endorsement. My record in the Oregon legislature isn't long, but it's strong. I've shown leadership, tackled complex issues, and developed a record that I'm proud of. And I'll take that leadership to Congress with me. And I have short-term solutions to rebuild our economy, like helping businesses get access to capital, putting people to work on infrastructure projects, and long-term solutions, like improving our system of public education and having strong consumer protection laws that help to restore consumer confidence. I'll protect a woman's right to make her own health care decisions, and I won't privatize Social Security or Medicare. Now, I encourage voters in the 1st Congressional District to take a good, hard look at our backgrounds and our records. What have we accomplished? Where are our priorities? What do we stand for? You can learn more about me at bonamichiforcongress.com. I am Suzanne Bonamici, and I respectfully ask for your vote in this important special election.
Thank you all for coming. Be sure and sign up and become a member of this organization. Come back any Monday. You're welcome to do so. I am now told that at least one of our candidates has a very close tolerance on being able to leave. So if we could just, we'll thank the television audience. We're going to take one more question. You've been very insistent. We'll do just that, and then we have to let them leave. If they both don't have to leave, then that's fine too. Then you can talk to them informally.
I'm Mark Meadows, a forum member. Taxes, deficits, all of these things aside, our economic strength is threatened by one thing more than any other, and it is the trajectory of increasing cost of health care in this country. It is moving in a direction, and has been moving in a direction, far greater than inflation in general, and will continue to do so unless something is done about it. I'd like to know your thoughts on what the Congress can do to change the trajectory of healthcare costs and make them tolerable.
Thank you so much, Larry, for the question. And you're right, healthcare is an issue that is increasing costs, that is increasing the deficit. And we've made some strides here in Oregon with the healthcare transformation and the insurance exchange that are getting up and running. But at the federal level, I would have supported the Affordable Care Act. I think it took steps, but it didn't go far enough. What we need to do is we need to make sure that everyone is covered. If everyone does not have access to health care, we are not going to be able to contain the cost, because what happens for those who don't have access to health care, they don't get preventive care that they need, and they end up getting their health care in the most expensive place, the emergency room. Those costs are passed along to everyone else. So until everyone is covered, I believe that the Affordable Care Act should have had a public option. Until we start to make sure that everyone has coverage, we're not going to contain costs. Also, the negotiation of prescription drug costs is something that we need to address, and making sure that people have that preventive care that is going to help. Now, sometimes I talk about when when we started having employer-provided health care in this country, that's typically when people went to one job and stayed there for the rest of their career. Now, I'm really glad that now with the Affordable Health Care Act, people won't be denied coverage because of a pre-existing condition, because now people change jobs, they change employers, and they might even change careers. I believe that that's been stifling innovation because of that pre-existing condition provision. But in general, we need to work toward making sure that everyone is covered so we can begin to contain costs and move toward a system where we have universal coverage and therefore lower costs.
Let's say you all want to go to a Trailblazer game. Average ticket price, let's say, is $100. Because of the price, most of you say, I can't go. Can't have access to Blazer games. It's out of my budget. Let's say you lower the price to a Trailblazer game to $15. Now everybody has access to go to a game. This is what we need to do in healthcare, Martin. If you want to increase access, you lower costs first. Therefore, more people can take advantage of what we have. I was against the Affordable Care Act. I would have voted against it because it didn't do anything to fix costs. So you're asking your frustrated question right now. You know, you would have thought 2 years ago when it was passed, you wouldn't have to ask that question based on how it was sold to us. But obviously my premiums, your premiums continue to rise. Now, what do you do to specifically? Once again, check my website for more detail, but you allow for more portability, you allow us to shop across state lines, you control the litigation that is so rampant in the healthcare world, tort reform. You allow small businesses like mine to pool together so we have more buying power like an Intel has. These are things that would create market forces to lower the costs. And ladies and gentlemen, we have businesses right here in the 1st District who are developing technologies to help us lower costs, but here's the sad note. They don't have a member of Congress championing them. I used to promote the Los Angeles Clippers, of all things, for a living. If I could champion the lowly Clippers, I can't wait to see what I can do with Oregon. And I would add, the Virginia Garcia Memorial Health Centers, I'm on the board of these. We have 6 of them in Washington and Yamhill County. And these are opportunities for people with low income or no income to receive health care because they can't afford insurance. This is a local solution that needs to be paraded to the nation, but you have to have a strong member of Congress who has the voice and the expertise to do it. Thank you.
Okay, let's give them one final hand. They've done a terrific job. Thank you all for coming. Again, please come back some other time, frequently. Let's give, particularly Suzanne, who has a really close appointment, quick access out. And Rob said he can stay around for a little while. We will not do it formally, but you can chat with him informally if you want. Okay? Esther, do you have anything further?
Actually, at this point, I don't. I have a couple of announcements. I want to let you guys know. Oops, I don't have my announcement in front of me. But also, just remind everybody, please feel free to come and join the forum. It's a really wonderful opportunity to hear people of this quality speak every time. It's really great. So meanwhile, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.